Welcome back, everybody. In today's video, I'm doing something so exciting for a Montero nerd like myself. I found a killer deal on 3 parts cars. The only problem is they're 4 hours from home. None of them run, none of them drive, and none of them have a title. So I've got my buddy in tow with me. He's got a flatbed that can haul 2 of them. I've got a car dolly that can haul 1 of them. We're gonna swing down to Cody, Wyoming and pick these things up. Now, I've got a whole plan for what I'm gonna do with these things. I know that you guys who are Montero nerds are gonna be excited about this, but before I get into the whole plan, what I'm doing with 3 parts cars, let me show you what I just scored. So like I said, these 3 cars are in Cody, Wyoming, which is about 4 hours from where I live. I had people sending me links to the Facebook ad for weeks before I finally reached out and pulled the trigger on buying them. I knew it was a good deal, but the logistics of getting 3 cars back to my house from another state was a challenge. My buddy offered to help me haul them as well as store them at his shop in Billings so that I could move them one at a time back to my place. So I took him up on it. We picked a pretty rough day to get these cars. It was about 105 degrees. It was super windy, so that's not ideal for towing cars back. All right, 3.5 grueling hours later, it's 100 degrees outside, but we're about to pull up. Let me show you what I just picked up. So this is the haul, 3 vehicles total. A Mitsubishi Mighty Max and 2 Dodge Raiders, which if you didn't know is the same as a Mitsubishi Montero, the 2-door version. And I got all 3 of them for $900 total. Now, they are all in some sort of disrepair. Some have engines, some don't, but they have transmissions. Parts have been moved around between the 3 of them. So it's kind of like a giant puzzle to figure out what is there and what is missing. We didn't waste any time since it was hot and we didn't want to spend too long loading the trailers, so we just got started. We ended up having to drag the 2 Raiders onto the equipment hauler using a tow strap. It made for an interesting show for the previous owners, but we managed to load everything safely between me and my 2 friends. These Raiders barely fit bumper to bumper on this hauler, but once we got them all strapped down, it ended up being the perfect size. Next was the Mighty Max. I winched this one onto my car dolly because I was going to haul it back that night. The other 2 vehicles would get parked at my friend's shop for the next few weeks while I worked out the logistics of moving them back to my house. The Mighty Max loaded up no problem, and within about 20 minutes, we are back on the road with 3 cars in tow. The trip back to Montana was pretty uneventful and smooth, aside from blowing out a tire on my car dolly literally half a mile from my friend's shop. We still got there no problem, and he swapped on a spare so that I could give it a ride home. All right, we got both of these unloaded at the shop, and there's like a torrential downpour happening right now. But I wanted to go over what these are and what's good on them and what's bad on them. So these are 2 Dodge Raiders, and if you're unfamiliar, they are the exact same thing as the Montero, but in a lower spec. So this one right here is an 88, and it's the V6, and this one was a 4-cylinder, and this is an 86. So the good of this one, it has a motor. The bad, the motor is torn apart. It's not in great shape. It looks like it snapped a timing belt. I have no idea if this is ever going to run again. No idea if it turns over. Most of the parts are in the back, but this is disassembled right now. The bad, again, it also has no transmission. So you come in here, no transmission on this guy. It's got these weird seats. I really don't like these seats. I don't know what they came out of. I don't think they ever came in a Montero. But either way, it's got those. And then, like I said, a bunch of parts. The interior of this and the body is actually pretty good. There's obviously a little bit of a big hole here. I don't think that's all factory. But the dash looks pretty good. It's blue. The body's okay. We've got some stuff up here. This obviously faded. The body panels actually look pretty good. Come around to this side. Unfortunately, this door does have some dings in it down here, but it's actually in pretty good shape too. So this is an okay body. The one thing I wish it had is a gas tank. It doesn't have a gas tank, and if you jump in here, you can see somebody did something at some point, and the wiring harness is pretty torn up. So that's not ideal for swapping something in, and it's also missing quite a few components right here. And so I'm not 100% sure where this leaves me as far as what to do with this whole system, whether or not this is even worth messing with. But that's a good point. Also, steering wheel's missing some stuff. Windshield's got a crack. Headliner's actually in really good shape. And so overall, there's some good, there's some bad, but that's this Montero. One thing to note coming around the rear here is this axle is actually coil sprung, and it's enormous. That differential is huge. So it's got the coils, and it's got the panhard bar. This is actually some pretty sought after stuff. This is some pretty hardcore stuff as far as this body style goes. And so that's really interesting to me. I'm not 100% sure what I could do with it yet, but that's worth noting. But then if you come over here to the front, it's a little hard to see, but both of the torsion bars are snapped off. So on both sides, they're completely snapped. I don't know what this guy was doing. So that's just sitting on the bump stops there in the front. So again, I'm not sure how much of this is going to be usable, but I am interested in some of the good parts. I'm interested in the body panels, maybe the whole body, and maybe that rear axle. Now moving on to this Raider, this is actually a lot more similar to my little blue Montero. And so it's got all the same stuff as far as the 4-cylinder, the manual transmission, and the body style is the same, but it's a Dodge Raider. As you can see, this one obviously missing a motor. It's still got some of the components around, but it has a transmission. So this one's got a transmission, and this would work in my little blue one. I have no idea the condition of this transmission, but it's good to know that it's in here. The body on this one is a little more rough. It's got a little bit of rust, especially down here on the rocker panels. You're starting to see a little bit, but again, relatively straight. I bet with a respray, it would do pretty good. And this one's got more of a traditional interior. So these are the original seats. No idea what they look like under these seat covers. And then it's got the transmission, which does shift in and out of gear. It's got this inclinometer. That's also valuable if I decide to sell it, or it's nice to have. Gauge cluster on this one as well. And then this one came with a bunch of parts in the back. So here's the parts in the back of this. You've got an AC compressor, alternator, radiator, a couple other good things. And then this whole chest is full of fluids and stuff. So lots of good parts on that. Good bench seat. Overall, this looks like it's going to have a lot of good parts for me. After dropping off the 2 cars at my friend's shop, I hit the road for another 2-hour journey home with the Mighty Max. Everything went smoothly and I was able to make it home at about midnight. And last but not least is this gem. So I towed this one all the way back to Bozeman using my car dolly, and it's because I wanted to get started working on this one first. But before I explain what I'm doing with this Mighty Max, let me show you why it's really good. This has the V6 engine that comes in a lot of the first gens, and I don't love this motor, but it's a little more powerful. The nice thing about it is electronic fuel injection. So the motor is actually complete in this. It looks like it has all of the stuff in it, and it also has a transmission and a transfer case. So that's really sweet. And the previous owner said that this one actually turns over. The motor is free. However, he thinks it might have skipped some timing. So I have to put a little bit of juice to this and see if I can get it fired up and see what's going on with this. But this might be a good motor. It might be a good wiring harness, and it might be a good transmission for a swap project. As far as the body goes, it's okay. This driver's side door has a pretty good gash in it right here. The rest of the panels are all right. There's a dent here. The rear tailgate, although it's really cool because it says Mighty Max, it's got a hole in it. It's really dented up. Same thing over here. There's a tear in the bumper right there. This side of the bed, it's just okay. The cab has been smashed in. So almost every single panel, except for this passenger door, has something wrong with it. However, there's still a lot of good parts. The motor, the transmission, the transfer case, the differentials are a little bit different than the Monteros, but they might be useful for something. And these wheels are pretty sweet, although the tires are shot. A closer look at the interior, you can see this thing is gnarly. It's covered in dirt, it's covered in dust. It smells like mice in here. So I did find a mouse nest right there. It was underneath the seat. I'm hoping that this seat is actually salvageable. I need it for a project. I might need to clean it. I might need to reupholster it. It might not be savable. We'll see. But it's pretty hammered in here. The windshield is good, so that's a plus if I can manage to pull that out. And it's got some other things like good window handles and some good parts of plastic right here. But it's pretty rough in here. So now I have all 3 of these back at my house and I'm ready to start working on them. And this is a ridiculous sight to see this many Monteros or Raiders and a Mighty Max. And I actually have another one over there that I'll tell you more about in a second. But I've got all of these back, and so it's time to figure out what am I doing with all these cars. And so I've done a lot of deliberating. I've done a lot of looking and on the internet. I've done a lot of asking questions of people who have done this before. And I think I have a plan. So let me show you guys what I'm thinking. So here's my plan. Now I know this looks a little chaotic, but hopefully this will help explain how I'm planning on taking about 7 cars and making them into 3 cars. So let me walk through this. There's a few that you guys know about, like the blue Mighty Max, little blue, the V6 Raider, that's the blue one, and then the 4-cylinder Raider, that's the black one. But I also bought 3 other cars. There's gonna be the van that I got from the Gambler 500 that I did a video about earlier, as well as the Dakota that I got from the Gambler 500. And then there's the Ram 50 that I got from the Gambler as well. So I've got 3 Gambler cars in here that I've either parted out or moved things around. So let me show you exactly what's happening here. The first step is going to be to get this 4-cylinder Raider back on the road. The big thing is going to be moving the motor from Little Blue over into that car. So I'm gonna pull everything out of there, maybe the transmission, maybe the T-case, but definitely the motor. I'm not 100% sure if the transmission and transfer case are good in that, but that's the plan, is to take the motor out of Little Blue, that 4-cylinder, and put it into there, and fingers crossed it will all run. Then the plan is to sell that truck. After that, I'm going to take the motor, the transmission, the transfer case, and probably the wiring out of the blue Mighty Max, which hopefully has a good motor in it, and I'm gonna swap that into the Little Blue Montero. In order to make that happen, I'm gonna pull some parts like the wiring harness, the motor mounts, the fuel system, and maybe the air conditioning. I'm not 100% sure how the AC will work, and I'm gonna move that into the Little Blue Montero. So between the blue Mighty Max and the V6 Raider, I'm gonna take both of those things and I'm going to put them into the Little Blue Montero. After all of that's done, I'm gonna pull off some parts to have as spares for the red Dodge, and then I'm going to scrap that truck. Now moving over to the V6 Raider, the blue one, I'm gonna pull the differentials, including maybe the entire rear frame, because it's got that coil sprung suspension. I'm gonna pull the CVs, the front differential, and I'm also gonna grab the hydraulic clutch assembly off so that I can move all of those parts over toward the red Dodge. I'm also gonna try to pull the gas tank off of the blue Mighty Max, because then I'll be able to use the EFI gas tank and some interior parts and move them over as well. After that, this thing's gonna be pretty much done. I'm gonna part out a few more things, and then that one's going to scrap as well, which leaves me with the red D50, the Dodge, the Ram 50, the Mighty Max, whatever you're gonna call it. And that's where we get into this. I've got the van's motor that I pulled out, and then I've got that Dodge Dakota, and I'm taking the transmission, which is an NV3500 and NP231 transfer case, and then all of the wiring for both of those, and I'm going to move that over into this. And so I've got a giant plan of what I'm gonna do, and the end goal is I get one back on the road and sell it. I get the best version of the Little Blue Montero, the one that I want, and I build a rad scrap truck out of all of this stuff that I can just have fun with, beat up, and the goal is to make enough money scrapping things and selling this car that all of this is free to me. It's just gonna take my time. I'm not gonna have a lot of money invested. I'm gonna pull parts from this and that and throw it all together, and that's the plan, is to have something that is really good in Little Blue that costs me no money, and something that's really good in this red Dodge that is also really fun and doesn't cost me any money. So that's the cars, and that's the plan, at least for now. Obviously, things are subject to change as I run into different hurdles and figure things out. I'm excited to figure it out, but I'm super stoked that I was able to pick these up, especially for how cheap I got them. And so I'm excited to dive into this. As you can already see on the Mighty Max, I've started tearing things down, and in the next video, I'm gonna get this dark blue or black Raider up and running. So if you're into that, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.